The nurse stops her at the door. Visiting hours are over. Maureen O'Hara looks at the nurse. She doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't explain herself. She walks past her. Here is the story. UCLA Medical Center, Los Angeles, June 1979. The corridor smells like antiseptic and recycled air, and the particular stillness of a building where people come to finish things. Room 412. John Wayne is dying. Everyone who knows him knows it. The cancer has been working through him for years. First, the lung in 1964, then the stomach, then everything else. Slowly and without apology, the way serious things end. If stories like this one stay with you, subscribe now. Every week, a story worth remembering. Maureen O'Hara flies in from Glengarriff, a small town on the southwest coast of Ireland where she has been living since she left Hollywood, quietly, without announcement, the way she did most things. She has a house there that looks out over the water. She has her family. She has the particular peace of someone who built everything they set out to build and then had the wisdom to stop reaching for more. She has not seen John Wayne in 4 years. She books the flight the day she hears the news is serious. Not when she hears he is ill. She has known that for months. When she hears the word the doctors are now using, the word that means the conversation has changed from treatment to time, she puts down the phone and calls the airline. She doesn't tell anyone she is going, doesn't call ahead to the hospital, doesn't arrange anything. She packs one bag, drives to Cork Airport, and gets on the first available flight to Los Angeles. 11 hours in the air across the Atlantic, sitting by the window, watching the ocean that she has crossed more times than she can count, thinking about things she hasn't thought about in years. She thinks about Rio Grande, 1950, the first film. Ford on a camp chair in the New Mexico dust watching the two of them figure out what they were to each other on screen, which took about 4 days and then was simply obvious the way certain things are obvious once they stop being uncertain. She thinks about The Quiet Man, the Galway fields, the way the Irish light made everything look both ancient and immediate at the same time. She thinks about the argument on the road that Ford shot in one take because he knew it wasn't going to happen that way again. She thinks about 5 films and 20 years and whatever it is that builds between two people when they have spent that much time being honest with each other in front of a camera. She doesn't have a name for it. She has never needed one. The nurse at the door of room 412 is doing her job. Visiting hours ended 40 minutes ago. The hospital has policies. The family is inside. There is a protocol for this. Maureen O'Hara looks at her, doesn't explain, walks past. Inside the room the light is low. The family is there. Some of them, the ones who have been keeping the vigil, organized around the fact of what is happening with the particular efficiency of people who hold something enormous by keeping their hands occupied. They look up when she enters. They know who she is. Everyone knows who she is. She looks at the bed. John Wayne is smaller than she has ever seen him. This is the thing about serious illness that no one prepares you for. Not the weakness or the pallor or the medical equipment arranged around the bed like a new kind of staging, but the smallness. The way a person who has occupied enormous space their entire life can be reduced by the simple mechanism of a body withdrawing from itself to something that fits inside a standard hospital bed with room to spare. He is 72 years old, one lung removed 15 years ago. The stomach cancer has taken most of what was left. He weighs less than half of what he weighed in his prime. His eyes are closed. She pulls a chair to the side of the bed and sits. She doesn't touch him yet. She just looks at him for a moment. The face she has known for 30 years, older now, changed. But underneath the change is still the same structure, the same bones, the same thing that made the camera love him from the first frame to the last. She takes his hand. His eyes open. They are still the same eyes. Whatever the illness has taken, it has not taken the eyes. They find her face with the directness that was always his most natural quality. No preamble, no adjustment, just immediate, complete attention. He looks at her the way he always looked at her on set when the camera was rolling and the scene was real, like she is the most important thing currently happening. She says, I came. He says, I knew you would. His voice is not what it was. The voice that filled theaters for 50 years, that issued commands and delivered ultimatums, and spoke quiet truths that audiences felt before they understood them. That voice is reduced now to something thin and careful, each word costing something. But the quality of it is unchanged. The thing that was always in it, that particular combination of directness and restraint, is still there. She doesn't tell him he looks well. She doesn't say any of the things people say in hospital rooms to fill the space between what is real and what is bearable. That was never how they talked to each other. In 30 years, across 5 films and whatever existed between films, they had never filled space with words that weren't true. He looks at her for a long moment. She lets him look. Then he says, "Do you remember the road?" She knows immediately what he means. The road outside Cong, County Galway, the summer of 1951. The scene Ford shot in one take. The argument that wasn't entirely an argument. 2 people at the edge of something, both of them deciding in real time how much of themselves to put into it, and both of them deciding all of it. She says, I remember. He says, that was the best day. She understands what he means. Not that it was the most technically accomplished day, or the most professionally significant day. He means the day when it was most real. When the thing the camera was pointed at was actually happening and not being reproduced. She nods. Her hand tightens slightly on his. He looks at the ceiling for a moment. Then back at her. He says, I was never as good without you in the scene. She starts to respond. He shakes his head slightly. A small movement. It costs him something. He says, let me say it. I've been thinking about it for a long time and I want to say it right. She is quiet. Completely quiet, the way she has always been quiet when something real is being said. Not passive, not waiting, but fully present and still. The stillness that means, I am here, and I am listening, and nothing else is happening right now except this. He says, every scene we did, you made me find the real thing. I couldn't coast, couldn't perform it. You were always actually there and I had to be actually there too, or the whole scene was worthless, and we both knew it and the camera knew it and Ford knew it. He pauses. Takes a breath that sounds like it requires negotiation. Most people I worked with, I could give them 70% and they'd give me 70% back and the scene would work fine. With you it had to be 100. Every single time. She says nothing, lets it land. He turns his head to look at her directly. He says, thank you for that. For never letting me get away with less than the real thing. The room is very quiet. Outside the door, the hospital continues. Footsteps in the corridor. The distant sound of something mechanical. The ordinary business of a building full of people trying to keep other people alive. Inside this room, 30 years of something that never had a name is arriving at its conclusion. She looks at him. The face she has known since 1950, since New Mexico dust and Ford watching from a camp chair, since the moment it became clear that whatever was going to happen between them on screen was going to be something worth watching. She says, you gave me the same thing. You were the only one who ever pushed back with everything. Everyone else adjusted to me. You never adjusted. You just arrived, and you were completely there, and I had to be completely there too. He almost smiles. It costs him, but he does it. He says, Ford knew what he was doing. She says, Ford always knew what he was doing. A silence. The comfortable kind. The kind that belongs to people who have known each other long enough that silence doesn't need to be filled. Then, quieter, almost to himself, he says, I'm not afraid of it. I want you to know that. She looks at him. He says, I was afraid for a long time. Afraid I hadn't done enough of the real things. That too much of it was performance. He pauses. But I think we did real things. I think the road was real. I think some of those scenes were real. And if some of it was real, then it mattered. And if it mattered, then it was enough. She doesn't offer comfort in the form of easy agreement. She looks at him steadily and she says, it was real. I was there. I know what real feels like. And that was it. He holds that for a moment. Then he says, very quietly, the voice almost gone now, but the directness still completely present. That's all I needed to hear. She stays for 2 hours. She holds his hand for most of it. They talk sometimes and are silent sometimes, and both are equally full of the same thing. At one point he sleeps briefly, and she sits beside him and looks out the window at the Los Angeles evening coming in over the hills and thinks about Glengarriff and the water, and the particular quality of Irish light that made everything in The Quiet Man look like it was happening at the edge of something ancient. She thinks about 30 years, 5 films, a road in County Galway that Ford shot in one take. When she leaves, she stands at the door for a moment. He is awake again, looking at her. She says, "Goodbye, Duke." He says, "Goodbye, Maureen. Not see you soon, not take care, goodbye." The word that means what it means, and both of them know it, and neither of them looks away. She walks out through the corridor, past the nurse's station and through the lobby and out into the Los Angeles night. John Wayne dies 5 days later. June 11, 1979. His family is with him. At the funeral, Maureen O'Hara sits near the back. She wears black. She doesn't speak to the press outside. She doesn't give interviews in the weeks that follow about what she remembers, or how she feels, or what it means that he is gone. She has said what she needed to say. She said it in room 412 5 days before the end, holding his hand, in the quiet that belongs to people who have been completely honest with each other for 30 years and have nothing left to settle. The flight back to Ireland is quieter than the flight over, not emptier, quieter, the absence of anticipation replaced by something heavier and cleaner at the same time. The thing that has been waiting to be said has been said. The thing that needed to be witnessed has been witnessed. She sits by the window again and watches the Atlantic again, and this time she doesn't think about the past. She thinks about Glengarriff. The water. The morning light off the bay. She thinks about what he said. 100%. Every single time. She turns this over in her mind, not with pride but with recognition. Because it was not a quality she manufactured or a decision she made consciously at the beginning of each production. It was simply what happened when someone across the table or across the frame arrived with the same completeness. You met it with everything you had, because anything less would have been visible. Anything less would have been a lie the camera caught. He gave her that, 30 years of it. She closes her eyes somewhere over the Atlantic. The plane moves through the dark and she holds what he said, and she is grateful for it, not because she needed the confirmation, but because he knew she was coming and waited to give it to her. And that, in the end, is the whole definition of the thing they had that never needed a name. She lands in Cork, drives to Glengarriff, walks into her house, looks out the window at the water. The light is exactly as she left it. Years later, asked what she remembered most about John Wayne, she thought for a long time before answering. She said, "He was the only person I ever worked with who made the scene more real by being in it. Most actors take something from a scene when they enter it. He added something. Something true." She paused. She said, "I told him that. Before he died, I told him, and I'm glad I did. Some things need to be said while there's still time to say them." About what gets said when the performance is finally over and there is nothing left between two people except what was always real. About the particular kind of relationship that builds over 30 years of being completely honest with each other in front of a camera. About a road in County Galway in 1951 that John Ford shot in one take. About two people who spent 30 years making each other find the real thing. About a goodbye that meant what it said. That's the Maureen O'Hara who flew 11 hours from Ireland without telling anyone, walked past a nurse who told her visiting hours were over, sat beside a bed, and held a hand. That's the one worth knowing.